Story description. After his unfortunate death, Tomoki Kanata has been reincarnated as a member of the weakest race, a goblin named Ro. However, Ro has retained his previous life's memories, as well as an ability that allows him to gain strength and abilities from eating. He also possesses a unique evolutionary tree. Now, Ro has made a promise to himself that he would live this life to the fullest. In this alternate world of survival of the fittest, events unfold with competent subordinates and comrades. Chapter 1. Day 01 Day 10. Day 1. It seems that I was killed after being stabbed by the stalker whom I had considered to be like a younger sister, and somehow I got reincarnated. Wow, that was a mouthful, and no, I'm not joking when I say that I've been reincarnated. You could say that my current state of mind hasn't settled down from all of the confusion, so I'd appreciate it if you would save the comments until after I finish my story, since it might sound a bit wild if you interrupt me. Ahem. So let me explain everything from the beginning. Well, first let's start with my name. I used to be called Tomoki Kanata. However, since I was reincarnated, let's leave it as nameless for now. I have a bit of a lapse in memory here, but I remember that after a hard day of work, I was invited by some colleagues for a drink. I accepted their offer, and we went bar hopping. Since the following day was a holiday, even those with a low alcohol tolerance ended up drinking throughout the night. I even had to end up carrying a colleague home, since she was too drunk to make it by herself. She had fallen asleep, and I didn't want to wake her, so I left her on the bed. My constitution and love of alcohol was much greater than hers, and at that time, I had an urge to drink while watching the full moon, or so I thought as I opened the fridge. I realized that the bottom shelf that should have been stuffed with beer and chuhai and all sorts of drinks was empty. Yesterday, I had finished all of my drinks and had planned to go restock it today, were it not for my colleague's invitation earlier. I had completely forgotten about it. That's right. It was the biggest failure in my life to have finished drinking the stocks yesterday. If only I had saved at least one. I don't know. First, let's hasten the conversation a bit. I, who had wanted to drink sake by all means, went to a nearby convenience store which was open 24 hours a day, bought 5 beers, and headed home. Summer was approaching, yet the night was still chilly. The full moon that was suspended in the clear night sky was very beautiful. The clouds, which were slightly concealing the moon, were also pleasant. Indeed, drinking sake with the silver moon shining overhead would make it an even more delicious experience than usual. While thinking about the alcohol, I noticed that under a streetlight was a pretty girl. It was a face that I had recognized. She's what the general public would have referred to as a stalker. My stalker was Kiramine Aoi, an active female college student in the local area. She's 20 years old, 5 years younger than I was. Our relationship isn't exactly what you would call normal. You see, in my 3rd year of high school, I saw a couple of delinquents harassing a girl, the person whom I would soon know as Aoi. She was 12 to 13 years old at the time. I found her, saved her, and that was how our destinies had become entwined. Well, while it wasn't wrong to say that I helped, I'm not sure if that's the correct thing to say. Compared to how I am now, I used to be a cowardly chicken. At the time, you could clearly see that there was a girl being harassed by a pair of delinquents. Though it was deplorable, the surrounding people turned a blind eye to it. As a person for whom ESP capability hadn't yet awoken, I could either have chosen to help her or quickly run away. However, either by fortune or bad luck, I had received a military stun nightstick as a birthday present from my uncle, a weapons enthusiast. He worked for small to medium-sized corporations that had military relations, so it was easy for him to get it for me. Those companies were under the influence of one major company, Avalon. Avalon, the company that made my nightstick, had spread its name throughout the universe as a famous weapon corporation. At that time, I didn't have the courage to be in possession of such a dangerous object. It was worrisome to have such an unsafe weapon, so it was usually adorned in my room without being used. Check previous sentence. However, an Oda friend of my uncle said he wanted to look at the nightstick. Soon after, an email had been sent telling me that was on his way to see it. The message included a location where we could meet, so I decided to walk to it. I brought the nightstick with me so he could see it from the moment he arrived, which brought me to my current situation. Although I was a coward, I used the military nightstick on the delinquents that were harassing the young lady. I can still remember feeling a kind of lightness from defending a pretty girl from harm. After bashing the delinquents from behind, they got extremely mad at me. However, regardless of their anger, they couldn't stand up against such a weapon as the nightstick. After a few more hits, they were sprawling on the floor, foaming and twitching violently. I quickly took the hand of the girl that was panicking and escaped with her to someplace safe. I was really young in those days. Because of my curiosity and a whim, I had done a horrible experiment on those delinquents while managing to help Aoi at the same time. After that incident, her affection towards me slowly grew. It was only a matter of time, but Aoi had eventually become my stalker. It wasn't very severe stalking, however, until I had found a job at my current place of work, where she continued chasing me. She even followed me to other planets, where I would occasionally be sent on business trips. When dealing with stalkers, one should speak as naturally with them as one can, no matter how much they infringe upon one's private life. What I've told you so far may not be understandable yet, but after I explain how I died, everything will become clear. Anyways, after buying the alcohol, I met Aoi on my way home. It would have been nice to say that it was a coincidence. Yet while looking down, under the light of the street lamp, Aoi was emanating a black aura unlike her usual puppy-like self, so I could only respond by tilting my neck in confusion. Aoi, even as a stalker, was an existence akin to a younger sister for me. Because of that, I was able to notice the weird atmosphere at that time, so I called out to her. There was no reply. Aoi's face remained downcast. In that moment, I felt a great uneasiness that couldn't be expressed. Yet even so, I still approached her so that I could learn of its cause. Before I knew it, I was being pierced in the abdomen by a sheath knife. Even though I had a strong body, and the degree of injury was curable with regenerative medical treatment, I could still feel the severe pain that came from the blade that was being rotated, which aimed at gouging out my internal organs. It was within expectations that I would not die if the sheath knife used was made from a lump of ordinary metal, but what Aoi used was the Ninakaruri, a B-rank ceremonial knife with an additional thunder property created by Sakuma Heavy Industries, Limited. Ironically, it was one of the goods sold by the company my uncle worked at. Simply put, it's a single molecular cutter with the abilities of a high-voltage taser and other weapons. It's a kind of proximity equipment that increases in sharpness when the 1,000 tiny blades installed on its side start to spin like a chainsaw moving at very high speeds. Once activated, a high-voltage current pours through the victim when stabbed. The victim's movement is then temporarily paralyzed. It's also equipment used by the military. I didn't even have time to think about why Aoi had such a thing. Nevertheless, I was pushed down, restrained, and was stabbed by the sheath knife repeatedly. The amount of blood my mouth vomited was unusual as my body was being pierced relentlessly. Every time the knife penetrated my skin, I could feel the meat and bones getting torn up while my blood splattered everywhere. Before I knew it, the slender frame of Aoi riding on my body had been dyed red in blood. Although I had become a strengthened human after undergoing a reinforcement operation and exceeded ordinary humans because of my occupation, I was disappointingly killed by Aoi, who was a mere civilian. What does this mean? I know the performance of the sheath knife may be amazing, but was it strong enough to destroy the body of a strengthened human? Was she really capable of breaking down my stance with a surprise attack? Even if movement was impossible due to the high-voltage current, was that really so? Why, well, this situation is regrettable. At that time, Aoi's figure, that was stained red with my blood, was too impressive to remember in detail. Oh, well. Anyways, I was killed. I was killed by Aoi. A mortal wound can't be cured even after receiving regenerative medical treatment. The last thing I saw was the knife's point approaching my eyeball, which would mean it was approaching my brain. A uniquely unreproducible organ was going to be completely destroyed. After my head was completely lacerated, my consciousness eventually melted into the darkness. However, the story didn't just end there. The reincarnation hadn't started yet. My consciousness remained steadfast and didn't change in any way until I finally noticed it. I memorized that last scene right before losing consciousness, but didn't I die? Was it just a dream, or am I drunk? I rejected the idea momentarily. The answer was reflexive and indifferent. I was killed for sure. I could remember the pain caused by the electric current running through my veins, and the coldness of the blade that cut through my chest. This is absolutely not an illusion. Yet I'm alive. As to why I'd like to know myself. As I was thinking that, my heavy eyelid opened. There I saw it. I was looking at something extremely ugly. It made me think that I'd been reincarnated. It was this conclusive evidence that made me realize. Oh. Sorry, I suddenly feel sleepy, but it doesn't end here. Tomorrow I'll continue. It wasn't the darkness of death, but the result of being fatigued. Day 2. I woke up with a click. When I opened my eyes to gather information, I couldn't move my head for some reason. As a result, I wasn't able to grasp a lot of information. Still, I was able to understand one fact. Though it's regrettable, the story about reincarnating wasn't a dream or a delusion I had created while drunk. With a little more effort, and with my limited vision, I could determine a few more things. It appears that I was in the middle of a cave. I didn't find any signs of it being handmade, which made it very likely that it was a natural cave. The feeling of the rags I used as a blanket were the worst. They felt stiff and they were clearly dirty. The soil on my back was uncomfortable, and a pebble was digging into my skin, so it hurt a little, though it didn't matter. More importantly, there were a lot of ugly children who had green skin and sharp ears. Although I was wearing cloth, they were asleep and stark naked. There were about 30 in visible range, with 20 of them being the size of a human baby. The others were the same size as a human child, adults I presume. Well, that was the conclusive evidence that I reincarnated though, considering that if I move my hands, I can see baby skin identical to that of the surrounding goblins, and in each finger, a sharp black nail was clearly visible. If I wasn't reincarnated, what else could it be? Though I wonder if this in itself is solid proof. My arms were exactly like that of the baby goblin sleeping next to me. Apparently, the ESP ability I gained from strengthening surgery seemed to have decreased in rank due to the new body. I cried for a moment, seriously. The body that I have doesn't seem to move properly because I was a newborn. Today, like any other goblin child, I spent the day sleeping. I wasn't escaping from reality at all. Day 3. I'm determined to survive in my second life, yet after reincarnating, I decided to give up moving since it couldn't be helped. Through my previous job, I had learned that living dirty and having the capability to quickly change one's thinking was an indispensable skill. Apparently, the growth of a goblin is characteristically fast. Even though it's only the 3rd day since birth, my body has been growing rapidly. While my body used to be that of a baby before I went to sleep, its figure currently now is that of an elementary student's. Although it's still weaker than before my reincarnation, compared to yesterday, my body's power had skyrocketed. I was able to stand up and even run at moderate speeds, so I felt indescribably happy. I frolicked instinctively, though it was childish. The stress of being unable to move as I liked had accumulated. Well, this is only natural. When compared to the civilization built by humans, who grew up without worry of being attacked by a foreign enemy, goblins, since the moment of their birth, must deal with the fierce struggle for survival. Humans could afford to grow more slowly than the goblins living in the wilds, where the law of the jungle requires their offspring grow faster. Since my body could now move, I spent my time today learning this body's limits. I did exercises with my body until I was comfortable with it, and in the end collapsed from exhaustion. Still, this bed, don't we have anything better? Day 4. After reincarnating into a goblin, I went hunting for the first time. Or rather, those who do not work, do not eat. Newborn goblins were restricted to eating chubby caterpillars for nourishment. No, I'm not saying I don't like them. They're unexpectedly delicious, but we didn't have an unlimited supply of them. Hunting was unavoidable since rationing was no longer available, according to the goblin manager. It seems that goblins have to start hunting only 4 days after birth. It teaches one the strict laws of nature. As expected, it would be too hard to do alone. I made a buddy/sacrificial pawn, named Gobakichi, by using some lies and flattery while we walked in the forest. The goblins in this world seem to be simple idiots. Well, at least that made it easy to trick them. Oh, that's right. Goblin breeding can be done between the same race. However, the conception rate seems to be low. To overcome that, they kidnap women and violate them until they're pregnant. You see, yesterday I found a rusty sword near the back of the cave. While picking up the sword, I stumbled across a room with several women. Many of them were stripped to rags even though their levels were higher than those of the goblins. There was a beautiful child in an extremely cruel state. Her whole body was defiled by a cloudy liquid, and her vitality, which seemed to grow weaker with every breath, was ever more fleeting. She was surely on the verge of death, a severe incident to be aware of. It was easy to guess where they were kidnapped from. At my current strength, I know too well the extent of what I can do, so I can only pray as I clasp my hands with a Namu Amida Butsu. This was only a mere consolation, though. Perhaps someone there was the mother of my reincarnated self, but that's too depressing to think about, so I'll leave it alone for now. Indeed, it was better for two to work together than to hunt alone, but it was regrettable that Gobakichi-kun tried to eat the prey without my consent, so I hit him with a tree stick to teach him about hierarchies. Eventually, he rolled over, so I switched to dismantling the spoils. The result of our first glorious hunt was a light, brown rabbit that had a 20 centimeters long horn growing out of its forehead, so I decided to call it a horned rabbit. Though the horn was sharp, it was a bit small for a human to use, but because of that, it was the perfect size for a goblin. It didn't cut like a blade, so piercing and thrusting it like an estoc would be a more suitable way to use it. Gobaru obtained small animal horn. The moment I picked up the horn, an announcement resounded somewhere, but it was probably just my imagination. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, but my current name is apparently Gobaru. The goblin elder named me that when I opened my eyes for the first time. Even though it's not exactly to my tastes, I tolerated it since I don't want to use the name I had before. Basically, I gave up. Even though I acquired the rabbit's horn as a lethal weapon, it was still troublesome to peel the skin off of its body. It was even more difficult to ignore the stares of Gobakichi while he drooled, which made his face even uglier than usual. Wanting some peace, I decided to divide the rabbit in half and gave one to him. I tried my best to peel the skin off of mine, but it grew too troublesome, so I ate and munched the meat together with the skin. I was able to procure a weapon and eat fresh meat. This was indeed a significant first day. The meat was delicious, while the mysterious insects weren't bad, but they just couldn't beat real meat. Day 5. We went hunting for food today too. Gobakichi was forced to clearly understand our hierarchy, with who's above and below whom, after going through my instructions. The experience yesterday helped us obtain prey immediately today. Although it was just another horned rabbit, it was at least twice the size of the one before. It might have been even more dangerous though because Gobakichi was only using a wooden stick, while I still had the horn from yesterday. Its performance in combat was better than I expected. While Gobakichi caught the rabbit's attention, I smashed its spinal cord and gouged out its heart from behind. Though a small portion of the horn was damaged due to the rough handling, the battle was still a success because of the spoils we had received. Just like the rabbit that was killed yesterday, I broke off its horn. I unintentionally called the weapon the most legendary horn, but the announcement which came after corrected me. Gobaru obtained animal horn. I decided to ignore it since I don't understand it very well. While I was thinking that, I found Gobakichi-kun staring at the game with hungry eyes. While munching the meat, crunching the bone, and slowly gulping it, I felt as though my entire body was brimming with life. This convinced me of a matter that I had thought of yesterday. It seems that even through reincarnation, I had retained the ESP ability absorption. This means that I'm like in a new Game Plus mode since I inherited it, though I wasn't very happy about it in the start. By the way, from the time mankind was able to advance into space and even several centuries before that, the probability to be born with an ESP ability was 1 out of 1,000. Some even say that the psychic are an evolved version of the human race. Though some might say that ESP abilities are a non-successive kind of gene. There is no such thing as a psychic, with a 100% chance of passing on their ESP capability to their child. The probability of inheriting abilities is an absolute, so how they're developed is a mystery. ESP capability had become a natural part of everyday life. Even if somebody developed an ability through an unnatural way, like by coming into contact with aliens, because psychic powers were recognized as part of a person's individuality, nobody would look down on that person. The time when psychics were persecuted for their abilities was over. Though if a user was still uncomfortable with their power, devices that were capable of suppressing it could be bought at the market. My absorption ability was a major power, even rarer than the likes of psychometry, telekinesis, and teleportation, which were of the general class. It made it so, no matter how hard or poisonous something was, I would be able to eat it. My teeth could tear through the likes of iron and gold easily, while toxins would be restructured, rendered harmless and edible in my body. The characteristics of whatever I ate, whether it be an item or another living being, would be absorbed and assimilated into me, so that I could use them as well. This was an ability that could only be obtained at a fixed probability. I'm not quite sure how it works, though. Oh well, I just wanted to inform you about what my ability was. To question the principles of supernatural powers would be nonsense. By the way, just because I've eaten something that has an ability, doesn't guarantee that I'll absorb its powers. For example, if what I just ate was a living being, its freshness is an important factor as to whether I'll get an ability or not. After its death, I have 12 hours to eat it before the chance to absorb its abilities are gone. That said, there are certain parts that give abilities easier than others, such as the heart and the brain, where most of the power is concentrated. Physical strengthening and an improved recovery rate can be obtained in addition to the ability absorbed. Furthermore, if the being that I consumed was stronger than me, there was a certainty of simultaneously acquiring multiple abilities. Moreover, it's possible to strengthen an ability that's been acquired by consuming the original ability owner multiple times. Although absorption isn't strong on its own, the more I eat, the stronger I become. Naturally, there is a limit though. Before I reincarnated, I strengthened myself by devouring creatures of mass destruction and evil-doing espers. Unfortunately, the abilities I had gotten from them seemed to have been reset. Since there were some useful powers there, the reset had been regrettable, but I was fortunate enough to keep the absorption ability which more than made up for it. Thus, food, like the horned rabbit and the mysterious insects, should be eaten without hesitation. It was mortifying, however, to know that it was the only ability that I retained after my reincarnation. Since it's necessary to eat for survival, common sense and ethics could be easily discarded. The ability I obtained this time was called escape. When fleeing or running away, the probability of escaping and adapting to the environment increases. I wonder why the rabbit didn't try to escape when we confronted it today. Oh well. After that, 2 more horned rabbits were successfully captured and eaten. Going to sleep with a full belly was a pleasant feeling. It seems that Gobakichi-kun's reliance on me is rapidly increasing. It's probably because the law of the jungle rules this world, which contributed to him recognizing me as the superior being. Day 6. Apparently, newborn goblins are weak enough to be easily defeated by horned rabbits, and because of this, nuts were the staple food which most of them ate in order to survive, or so I'm told by Gabumi-chan-chan. You see, Gabumi-chan-chan was another goblin from our generation, and although she had beauty in her name, it's a pity that she wasn't that beautiful. All the goblins, the small fries, had the same ugly face, so there wasn't much of a difference. Me? I'm no exception. I confirmed this while washing my body in a nearby river. Well, according to Gabumi-chan-chan, the other goblins couldn't compare to my good looks. I didn't rejoice when she told me I was handsome. To what degree is a goblin even considered handsome anyway? I stared into the distance for a moment. By the way, after asking Gabumi-chan-chan for her opinion on Gobakichi-kun, it turns out that he's normal. That's good. Going back to the story, goblins are fundamentally weak by nature. Therefore, individuals with wisdom and luck seem to survive. Only a selected few with that degree of capability can be considered a true companion in order to survive. Tough indeed. Well, I asked Gabumi-chan-chan precisely how many goblins. Maybe non-existent many have fallen prey to the horn of the horned rabbit. After hearing those words, I thought, seriously, though the words flowed out of my mouth. After all, average-sized horned rabbits are only a bit bigger than the Japanese rabbit. Moreover, apart from its length, the horned rabbit makes efficient use of its 2 legs to execute an overhead attack to kill goblins. Oh, I agreed that it's possible. After all, intelligence was not found in those wooden stick-wielding fellows. To strike and kick as assault was typical. Fighting barehanded will certainly get you killed. The horn of the horned rabbit is a weapon. Only idiots will fight it up front while being unarmed. Having a small body may also be a cause. The horn will pierce from below and towards the abdomen. However, recently Gobakichi-kun imitated me by equipping a wooden stick, although I even see clever goblin equipping it here and there. That day, I made Gabumi-chan-chan as the 3rd person in hunting as a reward for the information. Horned rabbits are seriously delicious. Day 7. It was raining today, so we were relaxing and working in the cave. Clonk-clonk sounds were reverberating while I was striking and grinding a mysterious obsidian-like rock I found yesterday by the riverside. I'm trying to turn it into something knife-like. No, I wish to have fur clothes soon. I wanted to graduate from the worn-out cloth, but the horn was not suitable for cutting. Partly because I was making a terrible noise, partly because they were interested in what I was doing. The goblins born at the same time as me drew close. However, by ignoring them while continuing to work, they later scattered. Good riddance. The older goblins for some reason were smiling while observing me. I don't know why. Oh well, since I was able to make 3 pseudo-knives until slightly past noon, I'll consider this good. Since both my hands were starting to hurt slightly, I decided to end it at that. But the pseudo-knife manufacturing halted since it is just something to do in my spare time. There are 2 persons, Gabumi-chan-chan and Gobakichi-kun, who were staring at my work without getting bored. No. Next time I will count not by person but by goblin. I called for a strategy meeting concerning the formation of the next hunt. Various opinions were noisily being voiced, although it is a field where I am mostly unchallenged. Gabumi-chan-chan, who is smarter than Gobakichi-kun, did offer her opinion once in a while. Gobakichi-kun was constantly nodding, since he's an idiot. The remarkably wrinkled goblin approached us. This goblin is Gobuji-I. He is goblin community's oldest goblin. He possessed a social position close to an advisor, and above all, my name Gobaru was given to me by this grandfather. The strategy meeting was postponed to listen to the various stories Gobuji-I-san told us. No, Gobuji-I-san has a uselessly long life, but he has very extensive knowledge, so I do not want to miss this opportunity. Well, because it would only take about 20 years and a little to be called an elderly goblin, this body will not be able to have a long life. Ha ha ha. I pulled myself together. Gobuji-I told us many things about this world, such as the rules for levels and rank up. Apparently such a thing exists. Why in this cave, except for us newly born goblins, there were only elderly goblins around, among other things. Let's leave this world's levels, rank up and such for later. Let's first talk about the goblins who live in this cave. Apparently the young goblins, maybe our goblin parents, are working away from home in the forest. Working away from home, in short, pillaging, right? I understand. Are goblins so weak that they easily die from horned rabbits? No, no. That is a newborn goblin, right? Goblins are certainly weak as a race, however. Isn't this the reason for why the goblins who were born in this forest are able to move the day after, training to kill using a wooden stick and throwing stones in order to learn how to support themselves? Literally learning cunning tactics and the skills needed for living by risking their lives. The weak die, the strong live. I understand this very simple yet severe law. Really? So merciless, I'd cry. Well, lately there are many individuals who imitated us by pairing up when hunting horned rabbits. Because of it, the surviving individuals numbered more than ever. While I was nodding and saying, I see, I saw that somehow Gabuji's loincloth began to change shape. Apparently his long life hadn't dulled his desire to spawn progeny, or perhaps he sensed that his death was close. Ugh, after almost puking, I wanted to stop our talk as soon as possible and averted my gaze. As if I can gaze long at that thing. Since our talk had ended, his face showing how pleased he was with himself, Gabuji got a look of lust and went to the inner parts of the cave. A short while later, feeble feminine shrieks were heard. I put my hands together and prayed twice for the sake of the captured women. Doing anything more than this is for the moment impossible for me. Someday, I'd like to set those women at peace. Still, even living under those conditions is for sure unfair, I think. Even I felt that much sympathy. Day 8. Our trio consisting of me, Goba-Kichikuin, and Gabumi-chan went out hunting this day. At any rate, for the past few days we have managed to become quite fully equipped, although the equipment is so crude that I don't know if it should count. From several horns, I choose 2 comparatively large ones which I dual-wielded. In case I was ever hit, I created a simple body armor full of gaps by binding the remaining horns together with ivy which I fastened around my body. The horns are surprisingly hard, but against thrusting attacks the armor has little effect. However, against blunt damage it's quite effective. This should be plenty enough protection to ensure I don't get any serious injuries. Goba-Kichikuin is covered by a wooden breastplate and is wielding a club. The club is so thick that he has to use both hands to hold it, and the handle was shaved using horns to make it thinner. Well, since he's both the physically strongest out of us and the most stupid, hitting stuff with his full strength is the style that he can use the most to his advantage. Together with the scraps from the horned rabbit pelts and a sturdy piece of ivy, I had constructed a simple staff sling, strengthening Gabumi-chan's ranged capabilities. She used stones lying around as ammunition, and was our rear guard who could deal with birds and so forth, specializing in range combat. She was currently not equipped with armor, but given the time, I'd like to construct some for her. By the way, the worn-out loincloth is still standard equipment. I want new clothes. However, yeah, with increased numbers it gets easier as expected. With Goba-Kichikuin as the vanguard, me as mid-range, and Gabumi-chan covering the rear support. This formation was surprisingly effective, so the fruits of today's hunt was in addition to the horned rabbits also new prey. One was a poisonous snake with a length of 60 centimeters, a diameter of approximately 6 centimeters, covered with black scales with a speckled pattern. There were 3 of them, and I named them night vipers, temporary name. Another one looked like a bat, although I fear that it's probably something else. They couldn't help but stand out since their wings were shining in 7 different colors. We found one of them, and I named them 7-colored bats, temporary name. The third one looked like what did you get if you added an armadillo and a raccoon dog together. The back was covered with a hard shell. We found 2 of them, and I named them armored tanuki, temporary name. And this time we routinely caught 2 horned rabbits. This is a perfect result. However, at any rate, Goba-Kichikuin and Gabumi-chan seemed to be strongly insisting on something by staring at me with round and cute eyes while uncontrollably drooling. Well, it's not like I don't understand them. While the other goblins would have eaten the captured spoils on the spot where they caught them, because I wanted to appropriate the usable parts to make weapons of them, which compared with eating them took more time. I also wanted to disassemble everything at the same time, so we didn't get to eat in the middle of the hunt. That's why I understood why they get hungry. But I ignored this, continuing the work. When they disappointedly hanged their heads, I felt that was enough. Oh well, it can't be helped. After removing the horn from the horned rabbit, I threw the body towards Gabumi-chan and Goba-Kichikuin. Originally, I wanted the pelt too, but the drooling appearance of Gabumi-chan and Goba-Kichikuin was too pitiful to look at. But Gabumi-chan and Goba-Kichikuin were for some reason staring blankly at me after receiving the meat, slightly bending their heads to one side in puzzlement. Even though I told them not to eat, I handed them food. So I think they were wondering what to do. So this time I told them, because this is going to take a while, so eat this. After looking troubled for a while, Goba Kichikuin and Gabumi-chan greedily munched on the simple food. Both goblins had bloodstains around their mouths. After averting my eyes, I first decided to remove the shell of the armored tanukis. Since I couldn't break the shell with the horned rabbit horn, I had no objections to using it for the construction of armor. Here the pseudo-knife I made yesterday of a material that looks kind of like obsidian became handy. Its cutting edge wasn't really stellar. However, compared to cutting with the horn, it was leagues apart. I knew how to separate it, however. However, it seemed like the armored tanuki's shell had stuck together to the skin, so it was easier to remove the skin with the shells attached. After a slightly close fight, I managed to tear off the entire skin together with the shells, and a mysterious announcement was heard again. Gobaru has obtained shell beast skin furnished with shells. Like usual, I thought, what's this? However, I soon concluded that I should leave it alone. I decided to also gain some nourishment before I continued, so I tore the armored tanuki's heart, brain, and right leg to pieces and ate them. I gave the rest to Gabumi-chan and Goba Kichikuin. There was still meat left after all. Nevertheless, the meat of the armored tanuki tasted good. The texture when chewing it was seriously awesome. When chewing, the flavors mixed together into a wonderful blend. I'll try to eat a bit of the shell to assess it. Ability: Shell Defense, learned. From just chewing it slightly, I learned the ability. It might have been because I ate the heart, brain, and right leg earlier. Incidentally, Shell Defense is the ability to, when using objects made from organic shells, increase defensive power, increase chance to block damage, and reduce the chance of being hit with fatal attacks. Yes, it's a fairly good ability. It's profit. Feeling good, I finished skinning the other armored tanuki quicker this time, since I now knew how to do it. In my previous working place, I got used to dissecting creatures. As long as you have the know-how, it's easy to do. This time I ate half the meat, and I threw the remainder to Gabumi-chan and Goba Kichikuin, after which I ate some more shells in order to raise the level of shell defense slightly. Calling it levels is just an expression of mine. To make it easier to understand, I'm just calling it levels, and there's no specific meaning behind it. Understanding that the ability has gotten stronger than earlier is enough. Next, I started to disassemble the 7-colored bat. I removed the entire pretty 7-colored wing and drew out the fangs, who looked like they were for sucking blood. Then I split the meat, and we all shared it. The flesh of the 7-colored was compared to that of the armored tanuki very tender. Yes, a very good taste. Or how should I put it? Ever since turning into a goblin, all food I've eaten has tasted good. Is this perhaps because I've gotten the sense of taste of the race I was born as? Not that I really care anyway. I'm afraid that I didn't learn any ability from eating the bat. However, my physical ability seemed to be slightly increased, and after eating the meat, my body felt a sense of fulfillment. My ESP ability, Absorption, didn't only give me abilities like shell defense, but also could increase my physical strength, defensive strength, and vitality, and such, thus strengthening my body, which I was very thankful for. Even so, I wonder if my ESP ability originated from my soul. I had the feeling I'd heard about how a famous scholar from somewhere had written a thesis named "Getting Infected by a Special Virus Causes Ability to Appear in Compatible Persons," or maybe I haven't. While looking slightly puzzled, I realized that I had no means to ascertain the truth of this matter, and since the knowledge wouldn't be of any practical use anyway, I decided to drop this line of thought. Finally, I started disassembling today's main dish, the 3 night vipers. First, I cut off the head of the snake with my obsidian knife, but since the snake's skin was awfully hard, the edge of one of the knives got chipped. When I hung it up and tried to cut it again, it tore off. I thought I could make something of the snake's skins, so I tore it off. With their heads cut off and the snake skin peeled off, each goblin received 1 snake each. We ate. It was quite delicious. Yeah, if this was splashed with sake and burnt, it would be the same as kabayaki, eel dipped and boiled in soy sauce, is how delicious I thought it was. Just from imagining it, I started salivating. The horned rabbit and the armored tanuki's crispy and slightly hard meat is delicious, and the super tender meat of the 7-colored bat is also delicious. However, the night viper slightly exceeded those in taste. This tastiness caused us to stop working, and all 3 goblins greedily wolfed down their share. Ability: Thermography, learned. Ability: Snake Venom Administration, learned. Ability: Poison Resistance, learned. Ability: Presence Sensor, learned. Ability: Snake's Evil Eye, learned. After eating it, I learned 5 abilities. Apparently, the night viper was in a different league compared to the current me. When I eat something stronger than I am, The probability that I receive abilities from it significantly increases. This is one of the characteristics of my absorption ability. But getting 5 abilities at once is truly a first. My guess is that this is because goblins are a weak species. Well, I am truly satisfied with the results of this day's outcome. The remaining poison fong could probably be used as a tool. However, if Gobakichi-kun and Gabumi-chan, who don't have poison resistance, were to even graze it, they would without doubt immediately be on the verge of death. Worst case scenario is that they die instantly. Besides this time, I also received the ability Snake Venom Administration, which I can use to apply poison to the tip of the horn I'm using currently. If I'm not in direct contact, this ability doesn't manifest itself, but compared to the poison fong, it's a lot safer to use. That's why, just in case something were to happen, I ate the 3 heads of the snakes myself, because this way is a lot safer. Yeah, poison, which is completely harmless to me because of the 2 abilities, poison resistance and absorption, working in concert, only made the food taste better to me by giving the food a slight sting. However, 2 goblins were directing envious gazes at me. Hey, if you ate this you'd die, you know? Day 9. It rained today. It was a downpour. Thus, using the raw materials I acquired yesterday, I will work hard to manufacture new armor. The Goblin Elder earlier told us about the needle like steel grass and the sturdy string like slender ivy that grew in the vicinity. So yesterday on the way back, we already made ourselves a supply to use when sewing with the armored tanuki skins furnished with shells and the night viper skins. The first thing I made was my torso armor. I wanted to use the armored tanuki skin for the front and back, but the most important part was that the rear part was sturdy, and the rabbit horns that earlier were used to protect the rear were used to patch up the front. I mostly succeeded in closing any gaps. With this, I have finally ranked up my garment from the worn-out loincloth. The previous armor before? No, those were only horns fastened with ivy, therefore it cannot be called clothes. Moreover, the worn-out loincloth is equipped by default. Next, I made a wooden square. I wanted to use the remaining shells to reinforce it. Though it is still quite shabby, with this a sturdy shield is completed. This is a present to Gobakichi-kun. No, I use the dual-wield style, and the shield is too oversized for me to use. So Gobakichi-kun, who is the vanguard, should use it. Besides, lately he had started to be able to use the cudgel one-handed, and not using one hand is wasteful. When I handed over, he was very much delighted. Gobakichi-kun was equipped with his wooden cudgel, which was the same size as his torso, the shield crafted from the tanuki's carapace, and the wooden torso armor. Yes, he's starting to look quite good. Next is Gabumi-chan's body armor. Utilizing the remaining snake skin and 7 prismatic colored bat wings, and a small amount of the remaining horns, I stitched those together, and a body armor that reminded me of a national costume was made. Because it was made using the 7 colored bat's wings, it was quite vibrant. However, the bat wings proved to be surprisingly robust and elastic. Since the horn was arranged for protecting the vitals, the minimum required level of defense is expected. After that, I tried to make a necklace out of the 7 colored bat's fangs. Well, I felt that I didn't really have many options for using them, so it was more something like a bonus. The finished product was presented to Gabumi-chan. She was very delighted too. That's right. Next time I craft something, I'll try to make weapons for myself, armor for Gobakichi-kun, and a bow and quiver for Gabumi-chan might be good, I think. Today's meal was what I ate during my infancy period, although it was just few days ago, caterpillar-like insects. These could be gathered in the cave. Because it's unexpectedly tasty, this bug should not be underestimated, though I did not learn anything from eating it. Day 10. I went out hunting. Today's spoils were horned rabbits, night vipers, and armored tanukis. We were unable to capture a 7/7 colored bat. I felt that I was close to learning something from eating it, but it can't be helped. Such things happen. By the way, even though we encountered various creatures, but they all seemed to be a lot stronger than us, so we avoided them and hunted what we were used to. Oh well, we're steadily raising our level, so we'll hunt them sooner or later. Since hunting is finished for today, I will explain levels to you. Levels, to put it plainly, is partly a manifestation that makes different individuals' strength easy to understand. Though I do not understand the working principle, when you squint, a number will faintly appear floating in your field of vision. The maximum level that can be obtained is 100, and this number can't be exceeded. Incidentally, right now my level is 86, and, as a goblin, it is fairly high. I think it might have risen so much because I've been killing and eating high-rank stuff like night vipers without receiving a single injury. Also, although it might be inconsequential, Gobakichi-kun is 78 and Gabumi-chan is 55. We are getting stronger at a good pace. Although to say that as a goblin, Even when comparing a level 100 to other races, we are still treated as small fry, so right now level does not really matter. However, in this world there exist other interesting rules than levels. According to Goblin, when reaching level 100, growth stops there. However, those individuals with potential to grow further do not stop there, but instead can grow stronger through rank up. In short, the individual who have accomplishments can evolve into a stronger race, further increasing the individual's power. If you assume that today I will keep growing as well, then generally I'd first evolve into a hobgoblin from a goblin, then into an ogre. That is the general route. Be that as it may, there exists other routes than to evolve into ogres. However, what race you evolve into will depend upon what actions you have performed. For example, those who had turned into ogres, drinking the blood of prey willingly, who must have a certain intelligence, strength, and above all a high pride, turn into vampires. Those who had turned into ogres, preferring to use heavyweight weapons like axes and large swords, such individuals endowed with unusual strength and resilience turn into minotaurs. Those who had turned into hobgoblins, continuing to eat rotten corpses' flesh and bodily fluids willingly, and finally starts to eat even souls, becomes a ghoul. Those who were hobgoblin until now, that excel in handling certain weapons such as the sword, katana, and spears, certain people who have intelligence and skills closest to a human becomes another existence completely, half-blood lord. It's divided into various classifications of the lord race system. With things being as they are, following this system, by leveling up I'd turn into something related to an ogre. This law of the evolution of species is, to put it bluntly, very strange. However, since it actually happens, I can't deny it. And for me, who's living in a world of survival of the fittest, this helps me too. Well, Goblin says that usually rank up doesn't happen early. Because I wanted to see how far I could go, I didn't have a problem with that and decided to treat it as a challenge. Nevertheless, for example, even if I become an ogre, I wonder what sort of evolution I will have. I don't think I will turn into a vampire, because I don't really have very high pride. Probably not. Minotaur, since I prefer light thrusting class weapon more than heavier weapons. I really don't want to turn into a ghoul. Well, the ghoul class is an undead, the same as the vampire, and there exist several different undead you can evolve into. For example, the spell-slinging lich or the headless horseman Dullahan, according to Goblin. If you want to become an undead-type monster, it is easier to turn into a ghoul than a vampire. However, losing the flesh of your body is a definite weakness. The evolution that seemed best to me from his explanation seemed to be the Lord, who used various types of weapons. Oh well, I still have a long way to go, and it is not happening anytime soon. Having tired out from listening to his speech, I slept since night had fallen. Chapter 2. Day 11 Day 20. Note: Day 11 to Day 13 is not translated. To fill in the gaps in the translation, please read the manga. Day 14. When I woke up, my body had changed so much that it couldn't compare to how it was before I went to sleep. The changes to my body shocked me. I thought hard about what I heard yesterday before I went to bed. I see, so this is a rank up, huh? The mysteries of this world make me shudder. No. From my own experience I can understand, however. The natural laws of this world are so amazing that it's beyond scary. After killing and eating the orc yesterday, in one night I went from the physical body of a 7 to 9-year-old to the size of a medium-sized human. My physical strength, eyesight, and hearing had increased dramatically. Even the abilities I had gained before yesterday had also become more powerful, you see? This is scary. Even though my body had grown a ridiculous amount, I didn't feel any sense of discomfort at all from my new form. Even though such a huge change should have made me go insane, that didn't happen in the least. Even though my body had grown so much, I didn't feel any muscle pains from it at all. Instead, I felt overflowing power that was incomparable to before, like a temporary feeling of omnipotence. Freaky, right? Seriously. Now, if I was an ordinary guy, I would have probably be so happy that I would do stupid things until the feeling passed. However, the reality is that I wasn't even close to being as powerful as I felt. And therein lies a trap. That's why the rules of this world are scary. Now, that aside, it was interesting to watch Gobikichi, who had grown bigger as well, just stand there with a confused look. It seems that he also passed over level 100 after the battle with the orc yesterday, causing him to undergo a rank up. However, unlike mine, his skin didn't turn black. In fact, I couldn't see any difference in his skin color at all. He was still the same old green. Well, let's put that aside as well. What interested me the most was his face. He no longer looked like the ugly goblin he had used to be. His naive look, in some aspects, held some attractiveness. His ears were still pointed, and his nose looked somewhat hooked. Nevertheless, he looked a lot like a human. Having green skin might not be very human-like. Nonetheless, his looks were approaching to that of a one. Then what about me? Wondering this, I checked the obsidian knife for my reflection. What I saw was, with black skin, my face from when I was young before I reincarnated. Yeah, as one would expect, I was completely stunned until it settled in. For now, I went to the wall close by our sleeping place, grabbed a caterpillar-like mystery bug, and started munching on it from the head. After I had calmed down, I grabbed Gobakichi and went to look for the Goblin Elder. That's because if I didn't make use of the Goblin Elder at times like this, his existence wouldn't have any point at all. Just in case, because it felt risky, I wouldn't mention the end and origin, ruling, divine protection of the great god that I also received. What I learnt was, 1. Upon turning into a hobgoblin, my body and appearance became closer to a human. The reason for this is unknown. It's one of the mysteries of the world. Apparently, because of the hobgoblin's human-like appearance, they could even live in human towns. However, there is a long past of goblin slavery, and most of those coexisting with humans are still slaves. Those with good looks have become sex slaves for human perverts. 2. The difference between Gobakichi's and my skin color is because I am of a subspecies. Subspecies are generally stronger and have special abilities when compared to the standard one. Unless special conditions are cleared, you can't become a subspecies, which is why they're rarely seen. So apparently, I'm kind of unusual. 3. Furthermore, my skin color is black. Black is the symbolic color of the oldest god of the world, the one who controls the beginning and the end of something. Even among the subspecies, mine is the absolute rarest while being the strongest, and with studying, they're capable of learning the strongest magic possible. Also, to the believers of this god, I'm somewhat like a living idol, an object of worship. If that's not the case, then parts of my body are thought to be materials used in rituals to communicate with the god, so I have to be careful when it's laid in towns and stuff. Religion is scary no matter what world you're in. 4. How should I put it? Becoming a hobgoblin when not even a month had passed is supposedly very strange in the first place. The old man who's still a goblin said so it's probably true. By the way, of the goblins who left to work away from home, apparently exactly 40 goblins, only 3 had turned into hobgoblins. 5. Also, because Gobakichi and I had become hobgoblins before we left the cave, we were allowed to freely use the human women in the cave as we'd like. We also received the right to take things from the warehouse and use them however we want. Oh dash. Is that so dash? Yes, because he was kind of long-winded. I ignored most of what he said by repeating those words and pretending to listen, particularly around point 3, and the reason for that is obvious. Like I said before, no matter what world one is in, religion is scary. Even more so now that I've obtained the end and origin, ruling, and divine protection of the great god, characteristics with my rank up. It makes me think that it'll probably turn into more trouble than it's worth. I thought that this was something I should hide it as long as possible. As expected, we didn't even consider going hunting today. I practiced martial arts together with Gobakichi in order for us to accustom ourselves to our new bodies. The sparring was especially intense. Gobakichi's power was too much for him to know how to utilize it, making him quite warlike. Though I, who has had an interest in many different forms of martial arts, never lost, I could conclude that Gobakichi's power was at least somewhat stronger than how he was before. As expected, it seems like his abilities are specialized in being the vanguard. He wasn't very intelligent or quick, but his offensive and defensive power had increased tremendously, making him a powerful tank and damage dealer, a hybrid character. Once we concluded our martial arts practice, the afternoon was dedicated to replacing our now too small old armor. Since I've grown, the horn and obsidian knife I've been using have become too small for me to handle effectively. However, I'll just have to bear with it today. My venom by itself is an adequate weapon, so I can overcome this handicap for now. That's why today the plan is to use the stockpiled materials from the armored tanukis, night vipers, and various other monsters to create new armor. We used the armored shell from the armored tanukis and the snake skin from the night vipers to create new equipment. I was satisfied with the results. The armor we created was light, flexible, and quite robust. To put it simply, it was an armor based off of leather. We didn't make cloaks, but since it looked like light brown leather clothes, with long sleeve arms and full-length pants, it should be alright. The metal shells were placed in strategic locations, which further increased its defensive capabilities. We thought about our freedom of movement while creating it, so when we tried it out, it performed far better than expected. It barely obstructed us at all. We even finished crafting Gobumi-chan's armor that we couldn't complete earlier because of insufficient materials. Since it's mainly made out of 7 colored bats, it looks a bit gaudy though. It somewhat gives the feeling of being a national costume from somewhere. By the way, the food tonight was prepared from horned rabbits caught by the other goblins. It wasn't filling enough, it was still better than nothing. Since it tasted good, I pardoned them. Day 15. Our first hunt since our rank up to hobgoblins. Since we were displaying the might of our new bodies for the first time, I'm a bit nervous. Today, the first prey we encountered was a humanoid with the head of a dog and fur all over its body. I don't know where it got them from, but it was wearing rusted armor with a just as rusty longsword. I decided to name this monster Kobold. From observation, it seems the kobolds are a higher rank than goblins and about the same rank as orcs. If we include the equipment, then compared to the orc we ate, it's probably an even higher rank. In physical strength, the orc would be more powerful, but the kobold would be superior in terms of speed and agility. These two traits that are embodied in the kobold. If it were the us from before, we would have retreated immediately, or more likely, used my abilities to avoid the fight altogether. Using Gobumi-chan's accurate, poison-covered stones as support, Gobakichi and I faced the kobolds from the front. Excluding myself, who has evolved into a subspecies, Gobakichi's combat ability increased significantly thanks to his equipments. His cudgel was reinforced by wounding shells around it while his shield was made of shell. The kobold only had its rusty armor, while Goblin Kichi had various shell armors to help him. Gobakichi attacked the kobold directly. Rank up is scary, isn't it? Someone who was weak only just yesterday turned into a great warrior in one day. Goblin Kichi got some minor wounds and had Gobumi-chan treat them using some of our medicinal herbs. The Goblin Elder taught us about medicinal herbs earlier. While they did that, I took the opportunity to strip the kobold of its possessions. On his waist hung 3 stones. Using my appraisal ability, I discovered that they were fire spirit stones. Apparently non-sentient low-level fire spirits dwell within the stones. I pocketed them and then started stripping off him of his armor. I hung the slightly rusty longsword together with 2 books I had on my waist. From the corpse, I took the brain, the heart, and the right arm. Gobukichi and Gobumi-chan decided to split the rest evenly. They left an impression as they had a strange texture. Although the taste is subtle, they were still delicious. Ability, Kobold language, learned. Ability, predict, learned. As I thought, kobolds are stronger than the average hobgoblin. The reason Gobukichi could win was because of the huge difference in gear quality. On the other hand, I could win due to my numerous abilities and combat experience. Also, after eating the 3 fire spirit stones. Ability, pyrokinesis, learned. I gained the ability to produce fire. In the natural world, it's hard to overcome this difference. With this I can finally make yakiniku, I thought. And this was the outcome of the battle. After that, we hunted some horned rabbits, then returned. Today, the tribute my goblin subordinates gave me was horned rabbits mixed with armored tanukis, which surprised me. These guys, they're finally growing up. I lamented to myself. I think I'll give shell shields to the goblins who are sent to fetch armored tanukis in the future. For the evening meal, I grilled the meat the others brought, and we had a yakiniku party. Day 16. Today, the other goblins of our generation begged to me something like, "Please teach us the art of killing," while prostrating themselves. The goblins inside the cave were in a row alongside each other prostrating themselves. It was quite the surreal scene to watch. You see, the goblins that brought me food had managed to survive by killing horned rabbits, as expected. However, they also had night vipers to fight as opponents since we've been able to kill them. The goblins want us, or I should say to teach them how to survive against the night vipers. What do we gain from this? We asked, and when we told them that they said that they'd give us tribute for it. Well, it's no great loss for us. So before the sun had reached its zenith, most of the surviving goblins, together with Gabuchi and Gobumi-chan, had a combined practice session. It's a dog-eat-dog world, so, from the start, I'm going to thoroughly drill into their bodies that I'm superior to them, no matter if the trainee is male or female. Also, since dealing with insurrections is troublesome, I'm going to make obeying me an instinct, by endless repetition if I have to. I aim to stop training at the last moment to ensure they don't have any spare energy, while preventing their bodies and minds from breaking. The result was that everyone, including Gobumi-chan and Gobakichi, didn't have the strength left to move. For the goblins who trained and worked to the point of collapsing, I planned on using the tribute they've gathered to make something for them. I had the motivation to do something, but it's probably better if I didn't do anything absurd. It's the end once you die. Gabumi-chan lays exhausted and trembling among the other females, with extreme pride showcasing her armor and necklace, but let's pretend I didn't see that. In the afternoon, I went hunting alone for the first time since my reincarnation. I don't know how it was in the beginning, but now I can move around this forest like it's my home turf, and when I somehow managed to procure enough for the ones who couldn't move, I concluded that day's hunting. That evening, I went into the inner parts of the cave, where the human women were held captive. Since I turned into a hobgoblin, I've become closer in appearance to a human, so I thought having a conversation might be possible. Well, the outcome was, I couldn't have a conversation with them. They were completely broken. Their eyes were utterly dead, and they were drooling uncontrollably. There was a faint smell of corpses around them. Compared to how they were last, they were a lot worse. Also, in this short time, the youngest of the girls had gotten pregnant. Though it was inevitable, I felt a lot of pity for her. I couldn't help but think that a girl this cute could have married into a family, yet she ended up here only to be continuously violated. I didn't want this to continue, and so I asked, "Do you want to die?" If it was the me from before, I'd end up pressing my hands together to offer a prayer, but now that I've ranked up into a hobgoblin, I asked. The way I am now, I'd be able to kill or help these girls if they asked me to, since even if I was found out, my safety was guaranteed. However, my question was left unanswered. There was some movement. Her small, weak lips moved slightly, and as if she just remembered how to, a tear fell from her eye. Having understood the women's intentions, I took from my pouch a small, liquid-filled bottle that I had obtained from hunting the kobolds, which I left behind. After I handed it to them, I walked back to the cave bedroom. I didn't look back. Day 17. I woke up early and went to the interior of the cave. The captured women were all dead. They all laid still, as if they were asleep. From the look of things, the girls had drank poison and died in their sleep. Where they got that poison is, however, a mystery. Truly, a mystery. After taking the small, empty bottle that was laid close to them and storing it inside the bag hanging from my waist, being the one who discovered them, I went to report to the Goblin Elder. The Goblin Elder hurriedly rushed over, and in front of the limp pseudo-goblin that had spilled from the beautiful girl's womb, he cried bitterly whilst grieving. However, I couldn't care less. I took responsibility for the disposal of the girls' corpses, and because it was a pity to just let wild animals feed on them, I decided to cremate them. As payment for my labor, I took a heart, a stomach, a breast, and a uterus. Since the pyrokinesis ability I got the other day wasn't enough, I thought about what I usually do, so I collected a bunch of oily grass to make it burn well, and a bunch of twigs were used to ensure the heat was enough. After using my pyrokinesis to ignite the fire, I prayed for the girls' happiness in the next world whilst looking at the pillar of blazing flame. Namo Amida Butsu. Buddhist prayer. Among the girls, there seemed to be those with adventurers' skills. Quite a lot of them actually. This group of migrant workers, they were perhaps unexpectedly strong. They might only have looked weak because they were captured. Ability, human language, learned. Ability, continental letter deciphering learned. Ability, mental mapping learned. Ability, job magician learned. Ability, job light swordsman learned. Ability, job druid learned. Ability, job craftsman learned. It's unusual for me, but I didn't feel the slightest inclination to learn about my new abilities. After morning practice, I sent out Gobu Kichi and Gabumi-chan to go hunting since I wasn't in the mood. I tried making a shell-based shield, armor, and a sword from the materials accumulated to this day. Lately, crafting has become somewhat of a hobby of mine. It seems my new skill, job craftsman, came into effect naturally. The goods I crafted came out a lot better than before. The ability, like its name implied, corrected the mistakes. Speaking of which, the shield and armor came out successfully. The shell-based sword ended up in failure. As for my meal, Gobu Kichi and Gabumi-chan shared a part of what they hunted, together with the tribute that had increased since yesterday. This might be a bit late, but Gabumi-chan had also turned into a hobgoblin today. She'd become quite cute. It was intimidating. The difference from when she was a goblin is remarkable. Because her old equipment is now too small for her, I lent her my spares. She made a subtle expression, happy while unsatisfied, so I decided to make her brand new equipment at a later date. Truth is, I would have happily made it today, but there was just not enough time. Day 18. After finishing morning practice, the three of us gobs came upon some kobolds while out hunting. This time there were three of them, two of which were equipped like the earlier ones with armor and long swords. However, the last one had a short bow and a quiver. While thinking, is this the second day in a row to strengthen Goblin? I checked the surroundings for additional enemies in order to make a decision. With it being all clear, I chose to commence the assault. With the kobold that could attack from range with the bow and arrows being a higher threat level compared to the others, a sneak attack with a poison stone from Goblin's staff sling was the decisive action. With the poison stone hitting the kobold right in the eye, we stole away the bow-wielding kobold's usual composure and vision. Without wasting much time, Gobikichi and I went to utterly defeat the two kobolds who possessed long swords that looked slightly better than the ones we got earlier. My long sword may be worn out, but for my current body, it's just the right size. I've gotten used to my body now, so separating the kobold's head from his body was easy. Right now, the horn I used earlier is more like a knife now, which might have made me feel the difference all the more. Gobikichi broke all his opponent's bones violently, which was kinda gross to look at. Gobumi-chan, with this pseudo-knife I gave her earlier made of obsidian, look-alike, slit the bow-wielding kobold's throat and then gave it a finishing blow. Apparently, Gobumi-chan's evolution direction lay in brains and speed. To use weapons cleverly, intelligence was needed after all. After that, we worked hard at disassembling the body. We collected the armor, Gobumi-chan got the short bow and quiver, and I took the slightly better-looking longsword for myself. Because there was no suitable loot for Gobikichi, he will have to wait for the next time. While these kobolds sadly didn't have any fire spirit stones, my collection of small bags increased by 3. One I kept for my own use, and the other 2 I gave to the other goblins for putting medicinal plants in. Now, if something were to happen, I'm sure they will be useful. And so, each goblin got one body to eat. I didn't get any new abilities, and while I felt that with just a bit more I'd gain something more, the ability I already got, Predict, got slightly stronger. Predict lets me see my opponent's attack trajectories as red threads, so in battle it can be incredibly convenient. After that we hunted whatever we came across, after which we returned to the cave in order to sleep. Day 19. After completing morning practice, I didn't go hunting. Instead, I went to look at the warehouse in the inner parts of the cave. Since some of the captured girls had adventurer-like abilities, it occurred to me that items relating to those abilities might have been captured together with the girls. From just looking at the stuff, even a genius like me couldn't decide what's trash and what's worth keeping. However, thanks to the ability I got from the orc, Detect Analysis, I could see the item's details. In addition, since analyzing stuff gave the ability experience, even analyzing duds wasn't a waste of time. With such a carefree mood, it seems I found a treasure trove, and a fairly large one at that. Goblin Row has obtained Weapon Staff, Beginner Magician's Stave. Goblin Row has obtained Weapon Staff, Blessed Mistletoe Stave. Goblin Row has obtained Weapon Sword, Iron Estox X3. Goblin Row has obtained Weapon Dagger, Bowie Knife X4. Goblin Row has obtained Weapon Axe, Iron Battle Axe X2. Goblin Row has obtained Weapon Ranged Crossbow X2. Goblin Row has obtained Weapon Consumable, Iron Tipped Arrow X50. Goblin Row has obtained Protection Shield, Iron Round Shield X2. Goblin Row has obtained Protection Armor, Damaged Breastplate. Goblin Row has obtained Protection Hand, Solid Iron Wrought Gauntlet. Goblin Row has obtained Medicine Health Potions that might have gone bad X6. Goblin Row has obtained Medicine Mana Potions that might have gone bad X8. Goblin Row has obtained Medicine, Holy Water Bottles of the Enrique, Faith X3. Goblin Row has obtained Storage, Backpacks X2. Goblin Row has obtained Storage, Field Pack X3. Goblin Row has obtained Book, First Volume of World Wandering Journal, From Imperial Capitals to Unexplored Regions. Goblin Row has obtained Book, Second Volume, of 3, of Introduction to Magic, Basic Sorcery. Goblin Row has obtained Book, Nature of God's Prayer, Scenario of Receiving. Goblin Row has obtained Book, Recommended Guide to Arietta Continent's Alphabet. When going over it, I found treasure after treasure. At first glance it seems to be composed entirely of unusable scrap. However, below the uppermost layer, lots of useful stuff laid sleeping. Yeah, it seems this place truly is a treasure trove. While there's no great difference between the Estox I found and the long sword I'm carrying currently, however, since they were in a better condition, I decided to swap. Comparing the obsidian knife I'd been using till now with the Bowie knives, Their blades were longer and their edges sharper. The blade is single-edged, and only at the tip is it double-edged. I suspect it's meant to be used as a hunting knife, so I took the knives as well. For knives might be a lot, but since the production of pocket knives already has begun, there's really no problem. I looked forward to when, at a later time, I'd disassemble the knives to learn how they were made. After that, except for the estoc I picked and the longsword I swapped for it, I ate the rest of the swords. Ability, improved slashing power, learned. Ability, improved piercing power, learned. I learned improved slashing power from eating the longsword and improved piercing power from eating the estocs. In order for the reader to understand this, I'll tell you about my consumption absorption ability. I learn abilities from more than eating living beings. However, for items above a certain level, the power of the learned abilities depends on the quality of the item, and for it to enter my mind, I must have used the item a certain amount. If I haven't, then eating the item would be pointless, and in that way I have to keep wondering. I wonder if this will go well now. I've had to practice that perception quite a bit. Even if I make a mistake, I'll recover. I told myself to give me the bravery to keep trying. Reaching the top feels really good. While I was doing that by myself, Gobakichi and Gabumi-chan came by. Apparently, they thought it odd that they couldn't see me, so they went looking for me. They really came at a great time. I'd taken the potions and other stuff that you could hang on the belt and put in the field pack. I crammed as much of the rest as I could into the backpack. That which I couldn't fit inside my bags, I asked Gobakichi and Gabumi-chan to carry for me. And then Gobakichi graduated from his shell-wrapped cudgel to a rustic-looking battle axe, and his wooden shield with pieces of carapace sewn on was switched for an iron round shield. Since there was a hole in the middle of the round shield, we didn't really have a choice and made an impromptu fix by attaching a piece of carapace there. Then I had him equip the breastplate instead of the shell-reinforced leather armor I made for him 2 days ago. Together with the shell helmet I made for him 2 days ago, Gobakichi's defense was the highest by far out of us three. He totally looked like heavy infantry. He kept the cudgel he had used till today strapped over his back as a spare. To Gabumi-chan, I gave the 2 crossbows and 50 arrows. In addition, I gave her the obsidian knife I had been using till now in addition to one of the Bowie knives to use as insurance. But any more than this was, when looking at the weight of the stuff she was carrying, the limit. Nevertheless, out of us three, the one with the highest range defensive power was her, and with her deft handling of the 2 knives, her offensive potential shouldn't be made light of. For how she looked, the impression she gave off was of either a hunter or an archer, and at the end, myself. 2 long swords were replaced by an estoc, with a small shield reinforced by shells similar to the one Gobakichi has. This shield was made so it could be fixed to the right arm and still allow me to move my wrist without problems. To protect my left hand, I equipped the gauntlet wrought from solid iron. The gauntlet had less defensive power than the round shield. However, if the aim was just to deflect attacks, then it should be enough. This way I had reasonable defense, whilst not hurting my ease of movement too much. With the effects of the ability, Joblight Swordsman, added, I feel like it's risen by another level again. And also, since today the goblins collected an earlier unthinkable amount of tribute for us, we returned to them. I couldn't eat it all, it was far too much. Day 20. The morning was spent with practice. Compared to when we started, the expressions of the goblins had changed. Yeah, because goblins mature quickly, startling changes can be seen even in a short time, if training is done in earnest. This might be because, if they don't quickly adapt to their surroundings, they'll simply die. In the afternoon, we hunted. We caught 10 night vipers, 14 armored tanukis, and 5 kobolds. This is probably mostly because our equipment had rapidly become a lot better. Or perhaps I should say, the deadly combination of Gabumi-chan's powerful and accurate shots with the crossbow together with the rapid firing of the short bow was brutal. Because Gobakichi and I acted as her shield, it became even more brutal. To bring the battle to an end, Gobakichi used his high defense and his battle axe to decapitate the remainders. Together with my abundant abilities that I used to continuously vary my attack pattern and the direction of the battle, opponents like kobolds didn't pose the slightest threat for us. Perhaps with how things stood right now, even if the kobolds turned up with twice our numbers, we'd probably not have any problems. Only, what I truly wanted to eat was orcs. This was in order to strengthen the ability I got from the orc earlier. After that one time, we hadn't seen even one orc. I quickly wanted to find more orcs. However, today I went back ahead of time to the cave in order to read books. Well, having the ability, Job Magician, is nice and all, and that my magic power was increased by my subspecies was also nice. But because I hadn't the foggiest idea what magic was, I couldn't actually use any magic. That's why. In this way, I was reading Introduction to Magic, Basic Sorcery, until morning came up the day after. You might say I had surprising difficulty getting a grasp of it, which made it a rough trial. Or rather, I feel there's a limit to how much I can understand just from reading books. And what's more, I started from the second volume of 3. If only, I could see someone use magic at least once. Time, without listening to my screams, steadily moved forward. Chapter 3. Day 21, Day 30. Day 21. The morning practice hasn't even been going on for a week, yet goblins who've turned out to be somewhat useful are popping up here and there. As I thought, because the realm of nature is a severe living environment, or perhaps because we belong to a precocious type species, the goblins who underwent the soldier training program had their strength grow considerably. The training program is something that I had composed from useful parts one gleaned from my company's servers before I died. Recently, some of the underlings even managed to kill night vipers, and even the worst of them at least managed to kill horned rabbits by themselves. Those goblins, who a few days ago couldn't even get their own food, can all manage by themselves now, and I, as their teacher, feel mightily proud about this fact. However, Gabuji and his cronies found the results genuinely astonishing, and they treated me with stares both filled with affection and awe. I think the special treatment is kinda handy, still it's also slightly depressing. Well, it does me no real harm, so I guess I can just ignore it. When the sun arrived at its summit, I personally began training with the goblins. I spent the rest of the day doing such. That way, I can get a grasp on each individual's abilities. I can also catch any weaknesses or bad habits they've developed and teach them the proper way. Also, being able to single out the best individuals is useful, and above all it also serves to strengthen me. In this strict world, there are no disadvantages to having a well-trained body. That's why I thought 38 battles in a row was good practice. After the session, I once again came to the realization that Goba Kichikuin and Gabumi-chan are, amongst their generation, head and shoulders above the competition. Regarding the results for Goba Kichikuin from the recent training, it seems he has learned how to limit the power of his attacks to not cause accidents. Creatures of this world seem to change in direct relation to how much they contribute when in a party. By killing enemies, they get experience that raises their levels and leads to the creation of surprisingly robust bodies by the mysterious laws of this world. At the present time, as long as I don't use my abilities, he is a tough opponent, so if all goblins, except me and Gabumi-chan, were lined up to challenge him in order, they still probably wouldn't be able to get even one win. Goba Kichikuin, however, would not leave without incurring some damage. Gabumi-chan is slow when compared to me, however the other goblins aren't a match for her speed. Since she's a hobgoblin, her strength is also better than the other goblins. She's also grown her nails to be pointed and sharp, and I taught her how to use her nails skillfully. This is in order for her to fight well, even without a weapon. She's got speed, and if I didn't have my abilities, she'd make a formidable foe. However, you might say she's still a cute little thing. Speaking as an opponent, even when both are unarmed, Goba Kichikuin is still more dangerous in close-quarters combat. When the practice sparring was over, we broke the group up in order to go hunting. Usually we would go with our standard members, however today we had an additional member in our party. This additional member was a female, Gobu-chan. In our generation, she was the next most influential person after us three, and when the goblins were kneeling in front of us, she was the one in the front. Well, you see, while the 2 backpacks and 3 field packs were a fabulous find, Goba Kichikuin is carrying a giant cudgel on his back, and I don't think Gabumi-chan can carry any more than she already is. Frankly speaking, with me carrying one of the backpacks, one was still left, and while Gabumi-chan and I were each carrying a field pack, one was still unused. That's why we required one carrier, and Gobu was singled out. If it was her, she'd also barely be able to keep up with our hunting as well. Also, increasing our members with one more strong companion isn't bad at all. Yes, and of course she'd be carrying the backpack as well. When equipping her, we gave her the old leftover shield that Goba Kichikuin used before, together with Gabumi-chan's old staff sling. We also gave her the carapace-reinforced ceremonial-looking costume, the obsidian knife, and a bowie knife. Compared to the horned rabbit horn she'd been using till now, the difference was like heaven and earth. Also, because she was going to carry our luggage, carrying any more than this is unnecessary. Or how should I put it? When we're hunting, our prey will become her luggage, so having her equipment be heavy would be a truly stupid thing. Just enough to protect herself from injury is sufficient. Following that reasoning, this time's hunting was a lot easier than usual. Because unlike before, when everyone had to share the burden of carrying the prey, now Gobu-chan was doing most of the lugging. We finished the hunt without feeling fatigue. Carrying heavy luggage, Gobu-chan was tired, but compared to us who easily concluded our battles, there was not such a large difference. Also, since Gobu was also contributing by shooting stones with the sling, she also managed to raise her levels by gathering experience. Perhaps Gobu-chan's day of turning into a hobgoblin like us was close. We didn't find any new types of prey, however our stomachs were filled. Meat is very tasty, isn't it? After returning to the cave, I read then went to sleep. Day 22. Today, I crushed a goblin who was growing a little impudent. Of course I didn't kill him, but recently he was becoming too overconfident in his new abilities. He'll die one day if I don't correct him like this. For that reason I steeled my heart and punished him. I think this is a reasonable thing to do in an environment where carelessness means death. Well, even if this goblin does develop some rebellious sentiment against me, I can just beat him up again. No problem. Today the four of us went out hunting again as usual. We searched for and found some kobolds I could gain new abilities from. There are 6 of them. It's the largest group we've come across up to now, but as we are now we can crush them without a problem. Although they have numbers on their side, we have superior individual abilities and equipment. We decided to give it a try. Gabumi-chan, armed with a crossbow and short bow, aimed at a kobold and prepared to pull the trigger, but then something strange came out from behind. The rocks. A kobold of small stature wearing on its head what looks like a triple-horned horse skull by the 3 horns growing on its forehead, and a twisted and crooked wooden staff in its hand, it approached the group while muttering something. From its appearance, I think it's a kobold mage. I knew since I heard from Gabuji that goblins and orcs and other lower-class monsters like kobolds are generally unable to use magic to interfere with the laws of the world, with the exception of subspecies. But exceptions do exist where ordinary kobolds and goblins can wield magic. These are called kobold mages and goblin mages. It is a highly prized and rare ability, though not as rare as subspecies. Without a sense for handling magic, I couldn't wield magic at my leisure yet, and this time I'm facing a kobold mage accompanied by 6 kobold followers. This could be difficult. Even so, this is a good chance. If the mage used magic, perhaps by observing it I might be able to learn to wield it. If not, I can just take the ability anyway. Thinking that, we tailed the kobold party and that somewhat troublesome mission was a success. We were able to see magic being used for the first time. The victim of the kobold mage's magic was a green slime. Even with the ability invulnerable to physical damage, the slime's bodily fluids evaporated before the roaring blaze of fire, leaving behind a green stony core. It was quite the flashy scene. But having seen that, I gained a general understanding of magic. If I go back to the cave and practice a bit, I think I could do it without a problem. With that matter settled, we went on the attack. The enemy were promptly annihilated. The kobold mage died instantly from a poisoned arrow to the back of the head by Gabumi-chan. The rest were silenced by me and Gobukichi-kun, with the help of Gobu-chan's poison stone and Gabumi-chan's rapid fire. No matter how strong, they're no problem if we crush them before they can show that strength. We stripped the ordinary kobolds of equipment and put it in Gobu-chan's backpack. Then I secured the kobold mage's staff. Moreover, we took 8 water spirit stones, strange stones that give off water when tightly gripped, 6 thunder spirit stones, strange stones that discharge a strong electric shock, and 10 fire spirit stones, like the ones I ate before, all separated into 3 small sacks. I took the kobold mage and the 6 hearts for myself. The rest were eaten by the others, 2 for each goblin. Incidentally, I also ate the green slime core. Ability, physical damage reduction, learned. Ability, internal mana control, learned. Ability, magician proficiency, learned. Ability, intimidating roar, learned. It seems the green slime did not have invulnerability to physical damage, but the reduced version, physical damage reduction. But that's remarkable enough as it is. This way we now know how to deal with green slimes the next time we should encounter one. Simply burn them down with pyrokinesis. Then, I ate the kobold mage's staff and the 3 kinds of spirit stones. Doing this to gain abilities has become sort of a habit of mine. Ability, Hydro Hand, learned. Ability, Aqua Resistance, learned. Ability, Electromaster, learned. Ability, Lightning Resistance, learned. Ability, Flame Resistance, learned. Ability, External Mana Operation, learned. Yes, these are good abilities. By practicing these I can finally use magic. After that, We encountered armored tanuki and night vipers on the way back. They were killed mostly by Gobi-chan to gain experience, then eaten. Ability, Endurance, learned. Ability, Evil Eye Resistance, learned. With this, it looks like I have learned all the abilities I can from night vipers and armored tanuki. Well, it was good food nonetheless. After that, night fell, and I went practicing magic by myself. It was hard at first, but after 1 hour I figured out the trick, although it needed a bit of activation. I was able to do it without much trouble. Incidentally, a green slime decided to attack me under the cover of night, and seeing it as a good practice target, I decided to take care of it. I crafted a lance with magic and shot it at the green slime, killing it in one hit with fearsome power. I took the core that was rolling around and began to eat it. Ability, Self-Body Fluid Control, learned. And with that I gained this ability. Yeah, I'm now able to turn my sweat into a potent acid, which is useful and makes me satisfied. However, the fact that my equipment didn't corrode when I used it is another strange mystery of this world. Day 23. It was raining today. Because of that, we could not go outside and instead held a festival inside the cave. I don't know when it started, but the goblins in my generation had begun to operate as a group led by me, and this so-called festival is actually a round-robin event that will decide the ranking within the group. The results are exactly what you would expect. At the top there was me, then Goba-Kichi-kun, followed by Gabumi-chan and Gobi-chan. After the event, with the ranking settled, we did a study group. Because the ones on top have the responsibility of teaching, the ones below had to strictly follow the orders of those above them. Then we promptly decided on a few more rules. With this, orders can be relayed efficiently. While I'm at it, it seems like I'll be using military ranks. At the top, there was me as Colonel, Goblin Kichikun was Lieutenant Colonel, Gabumi-chan was Major, and Gobi-chan was Captain. After that there was a huge gap to Sergeant to match. The difference in power, well, it was appropriate due to our still small numbers. Day 24. Today after morning practice, the four of us went hunting again. And the first thing we encountered was a 70-centimeter long black spider with yellow lines. I decided to give it the temporary name Demon Spider. Because it had made a nest, I burned it to a crisp with my pyrokinesis ability. I had some trouble preventing a forest fire, since the thread burned and the fire followed it over quite a few trees. If it had turned into a conflagration, we'd also have died. Ability, Spider Thread Creation, learned. And thus, I learned how to secrete spider thread from my fingers. No, wait. Since I'm a goblin, it's goblin thread? Anyway, at my will it was gushing forth from my fingers. Seeing thread come out from my fingertips vigorously with a barrier yuri-like sound felt quite surreal. However, it's unquestionably an extremely useful ability. Unfortunately, as I am now, I can't make delicate work. Skillfully manipulating the thread like a spider is impossible for now. The best I can do is to simply immobilize the target. If I make the slightest complex movement, I'll wind up tangled in the web myself, unable to move. Yes, compared to sewing, spinning webs is in a league of its own. Thus, in order to freely be able to control the thread, I decided to search for more demon spiders. After a little while, I discovered some, and this time I tried killing the spiders with electricity before eating them. Soon I had 3 corpses. Ability, Thread-Wielding Arts, learned. With this, I became able to delicately manipulate thread. The thread was very durable, so I thought about making clothes and such with it. Also, the demon spider's carapace seemed sturdy, so I decided to make use of it when I next construct armor. After that, while walking, we saw our first orc in a long time. The place where we found them was close to where we found an orc the last time. Because this place was quite far away from the cave, we hadn't really explored the area, and I was berating myself over how we should have come here earlier. The orcs we found were in a group of 6, and different from the previous one who carried a pickaxe. These orcs carried quite heavy and splendid-looking weapons like halberds, staves, hunting knives, and longswords, while wearing breastplates or full plates. Moreover, I think that the halberd-wielding orc, with the best physique, was the group commander, the orc leader. Still, we decided not to attack them. However, gathering intelligence is another matter, so we followed the orcs down the mountain for an hour until we discovered the location of the orcs' base, a mine. I saw dozens of orcs with pickaxes, and the sounds of their efforts could be heard even from where we were watching them. For the present, I was satisfied with climbing down the mountain. If we try attacking this many opponents, we'll die. True victory was if we 4 could sneakily escape with our knowledge and remain undiscovered. At least that's what I thought. But then I spotted 3 orcs climbing down the mountain. Even if they raised the alarm, since the other orcs were far away, it would take a considerable amount of time before they could bring reinforcements, so we decided to quickly attack them. Hiding in the thicket, we waited for them to reach our shooting range. Gobumi-chan and Gobu-chan killed one orc each with their crossbows. The last one was stunned by my lightning, after which I calmly walked up to him and slit his throat. For transporting the corpses, Gobukichi-kun and I each carried one orc, while Gobumi-chan and Gobu-chan helped each other, until we reached a place I deemed as safe, where we leisurely took our time to eat. Ability Stench learned. Yes, plainly an ability I don't need. Stench, seriously? Well, orcs certainly have a distinctive smell. But since their flesh is really tasty, it's something we'll have to live with. Moreover, if by any chance I were to discover a use for the ability, I'll consider it a profit. Day 25. It was currently the end of our morning sparring practice, and some individuals seemed to have a hard time. So far no one, who has attended my practice, has died during a hunt, although some did get hurt. This being the case, I felt relieved knowing that my training hasn't been squandered. Afterwards we went hunting, and while hunting the likes of night vipers, armored tanukis and demon spiders, we found a new prey that undoubtedly possesses better individual abilities than the spiders. They were a pack of wolves, with black fur that almost looked as if it was made of metal. Without making it complicated, I decided to call them black wolves, tentative name, and for the time being I decided to quietly observe them. It seems that the pack consists of 16 black wolves, who currently seem to be engrossed in eating. Luckily, we are standing leeward, so they have yet to notice us. However, were that to change, we could end up like that kobold the black wolves are currently eating. They were 4 times as many as us, but above all the black wolf leader seemed incredibly dangerous. It was considerably larger than the other black wolves. If we went at them from the front, we'd probably suffer a great deal of damage. Because they had greater numbers, the advantage was heavily stacked in their favor. But even though that's true, an advantage can be turned using a surprise attack. Gobumi-chan let loose an arrow from her crossbow, piercing the body of the wolf leader who was still in a daze from eating the kobold meat. At the same time, an arrow from Gobu-chan went through the neck of a nearby wolf. The black wolf leader wouldn't die instantly from an ordinary arrow through the body, but because the arrowhead had been coated with my venom, after several seconds the wolf staggered unsteadily and then collapsed, convulsing and foaming at the mouth. Even so, the black wolf leader didn't die immediately. It was barely hanging on, its life slowly slipping away. Without resistance against the fast-acting poison, the ordinary wolf that got shot through the neck died quickly. With this, we were able to prevent the wolves' quick teamwork. Considerable time is needed to decide who is going to replace the top member in a pack. You could see the panic in the wolves' figures when it suddenly happened. Making full use of the mess we created, Gobukichi-kun and I moved closer and attacked. Though it was the first time since I was reincarnated that I fought a wolf-type monster, I was sure that I could easily deal with it so long as it didn't have any special abilities. On approach, the wolf bared its sharp fangs at me, so it could strike me with its most powerful move, bite. In response, I thrust my estoc into his mouth, dripping with venom. With the force of the charge from both sides combined, I easily tore through flesh, punctured through the skull, and destroyed the wolf's brain. I caught a glimpse of a wolf trying to escape the confusion, so I charged a high-pressure water blade with electricity and slashed at its feet. The battle-axe-wielding Gobukichi-kun couldn't hack through the thick-furred black wolves, but his attack forcibly broke its spine and ribs, and using his running momentum forcibly broke the neck of the black wolf that collided head-on with his shield. In the midst of all that, the enemy numbers are further reduced by Gobumi-chan and Gobu-chan's sniping. After a while, the pack of black wolves, who had lost the teamwork that was their greatest weapon and the effectiveness of their bites, had been nullified. Not even one wolf was spared. Once finished, 3 of us went to work on cutting up the wolves' bodies.